It's great. Again, remember Malachi 3:16, right? God said every time his sons and daughters get together for the word of God, in heaven he marks down your name. Right. Yeah, it's right there. 3:16. You remember John 3:16, right? Now Malachi 3:16. Read it tonight, and you're going to see how the Lord actually marks down everything that we do for Him. Okay, so you came here tonight. What you did is that you put money in your bank account in heaven. Okay, so to speak. I don't know if there's a bank account, but there's actually rewards that you're going to have and so on. So let's open our scriptures to Deuteronomy 19. Dvarim 19. So we're approaching that part of Deuteronomy where the words actually they flow from one law to another, and they bring us to see the importance of the human being. Okay, because in biblical Christianity or biblical Judaism, right, man is high up because man is made in the image of God, and so God actually made the laws in order to respect man. And we're going to see that we have to dig in to find out what God said, and you're going to love more your neighbor and have respect for the people around us, right? Because the Bible tells us to take care of the poor, to take care of the orphan, to take care of the widow, and so on and so forth, and we do that. But let's start with a prayer, of course. Okay, we thank you, Heavenly Father. We thank you for this time that we have. I pray, Lord, that you render unto all these people here present tonight the effort that they made to come and listen to your word. I pray that you bless them, bless their families, bless their lives, Lord, and touch them with your blessings as we pray in Yeshua's name. Amen. So today what we're going to see these refreshing laws that we find in the Mosaic law itself, right? And the deeper we get into these laws, the more we realize that Deuteronomy is not a legalistic rendering of the Mosaic law, but it's an exposition of the spirit of the commandments. Okay, you have the spirit of the commandment away from what is legalistic. So remember that these laws are presented to us in case laws. Okay, it's not pendetic like 1, 2, 3, 4. Only the 10 commandments are 1, 2, 3. Case law. So God brings in a case of a Hebrew slave or whatever it is, and He says, now let's sit down together and let's try to figure out the principle so you can apply it in your life and you can apply it also in the church. Okay, this is why what is written in the scriptures, even in the Old Testament, is for us to apply. This is what Paul said. So the last time we spoke, okay, if you remember, there was one very difficult law that we need to speak about. Look at verse 21 of Deuteronomy 19. Alors, verset 21 de Deutéronome 19. Là, vous allez voir une loi qui a dérangé et qui dérange encore beaucoup de monde. So, it says what? An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Right? Okay. This is the law that we speak, that we call the principle of lex talionis. Okay? Sometimes called the principle of retaliation or retribution. Okay. Right. Are you disturbed when you hear this? When you hear this law, does it disturb you a little bit? Yeah, it does. Okay. Okay, so the law actually seems to be archaic, that is old, barbaric even, right? That's the idea, okay? I just want to tell you something. It is not. It is actually a liberating law, okay? Let me tell you that we are today in the Western world operating under this law. Because most of the laws that we have, civil criminal laws, are based on the Mosaic law that God gave, okay, some 3,500 years, okay? So let me explain first. First, this law was given for the protection and respect of man. That's why it was given. Why is it like this? Because at that time there was abuses. So if you owe me $100, I'm going to come with my cousins, I'm going to go into your house and take everything from there because I'm stronger than you. So God said no more. Eye for eye. You owe me $100. First of all, you don't take the responsibility of going to that man. I'm going, God said, through the government. He's going to go take the $100 plus a certain whatever percentage for a punishment. That means that it protects the criminal and it protects the person that was abused. Okay, this is what the law was. Okay, I'm going to give you examples which are beautiful examples where both the criminal and the person are protected, but the criminal has to pay. plus a certain percentage, right? So it was given in contrast of two laws that were given before Moses, like the Hammurabi law. Hammurabi was a king that is in Babylon, that was about 300 years before, and the Eshuna law. Eshuna was given 500 years before. I just want to tell you, because these laws, if you go on the internet, you go to read them, you can see the influence in the Mosaic law, in the Bible itself. I'll give you some examples. For example, when Abraham did not have a son, right? It was to give his money or to give his inheritance. It was his first servant, Eliezer, who was to be his, that is, the person who will take the heir, right? This is according to the Hammurabi law. You find it in Genesis 15. For instance, at that time, if your wife cannot have children, you can go to the servant, right? That was according to Hammurabi law, because everybody was doing this, right? So you see traces like this in the Old Testament, but God actually cleans that out, okay? Also, these laws are very barbaric. Let me give you one example, okay? If you rape a woman, okay, let's say somebody rapes a woman. So what they do, the law says, okay, now let's go and rape the wife of this man. You see how idiotic it is, right? Because it is based on social classes. Men first, women are right there. If you're rich, it's fine. If you're poor, you're going to have to give your life. So this is the law of Hammurabi. This is the law of man without God. Okay, it is not nice, it is not respectful, right? But God came and He says, no, now we're equalizing everything, and you're not allowed to take the law into your own hands. God takes care of it, right? Because now you have a government, you have the police, that means you have a problem, call the police. You don't go and beat up the guy, because you're going to end up in jail with him, right? So this is what the law is. It makes sure that the punishment did not exceed the crime. Okay, you sold 1,000, you're going to pay 1,000 and 1,500 less here, or $200 more or so. No more than that. So when God implemented the laws of the eye for eye, it was originally, again, for equality of men. It was given so that one does not retaliate, and so there's no anarchy in there, right? Again, let me give you that example. If one guy from one tribe fought with a guy from the tribe of Manasseh against the tribe of Ephraim, so what would happen is that one will bring his cousin, the other one will bring his friends and his father, and it becomes a war in Israel. Okay, Manasseh against Ephraim. God said it's finished now. You get the two guys, we want to see them. And then they go to the judge decides. Okay, that's what it is for the law of eye for eye. So the law was instituted, to sum up, okay, for two things. First, retaliation is not one's business. You don't retaliate. You don't fight. The police will do it for you. Right? God said in Deuteronomy 32:35, He says, vengeance is mine, not you. Vengeance is mine. And that's good, because when it comes to prayer, if somebody took something from you, call God. He is the judge. He knows, and He says, vengeance is mine. Because sometimes people do steal money from us. They take things from us, okay? And we want to do something. We get so angry about it. But this is where the faith comes. God will give you that faith and that tranquility of heart. And so you give it up to Him, that is. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I said, if a person is found guilty, the punishment will fit the crime. Punishment, crime. That's it. There's no abuse. No abuse. Now let me give you some example. Okay, if you go to Deuteronomy 24:6, because we're going to navigate through Deuteronomy, see what it says here. Let's try to understand the principle in there. Because if you read it fast, you're going to say, okay, it's nice. Let's pass by it. Deuteronomy 24:6. Hey, how are you doing? Bonsoir. On parle de la loi. We're talking about the law. Okay, Mosaic law. So I'm giving an example in Deuteronomy 24:6 about the eye for eye, and I'm trying to explain that the eye for eye was to limit the punishment, so to speak. The punishment will fit the crime. This is mainly what it is. So Deuteronomy 24:6, no man shall take the lower or the upper millstone in pledge. for he takes one's living in pledge. Okay, you see the principle in there? Okay, the principle. C'est quoi? A pledge, c'est une garantie. Une garantie. You see, the lower and the upper millstone, this is what the guy was doing in his lifetime. This is what actually he was doing. He's a baker, let's say, or he was grinding, let's say, some grain, and this is what he was doing every day. So God says, the guy who does that, you don't go and take off his way of making money because he owes you money. It doesn't fit the crime. You have to let him do his work. Okay? And let's talk about the money that he gives you. Okay? For example, you cannot take a taxi from a taxi driver. The guy, how is he going to make his money? He says, you're not allowed to do that. Okay? So that is, if someone owes you money, you're not allowed to take it from him, his means of making money. Don't exceed to what it is. Okay? So eye for eye, the authority will determine when and how much he's going to give it to you, right? So if he can give you, let's say, the $1,000 he owes you now, the authority will say, okay, he'll give you $10 a week. Okay, which is fine, plus $200 at the end or whatever it is, right? And that is really respecting men. Now see verses 10 to 11 in the same chapter, verses 10 to 11, and see the beauty of the laws in there. Alors, toujours le même chapitre 24, verset 10-11. He says, when you lend your brother anything, of course your brother is anybody around, right? You shall not go into his house to get his pledge. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you lend shall bring the pledge out to you. Okay? You're not allowed to go into his house. You wait outside his house. 10. Yeah. Isn't it the same chapter? Yeah. Okay. So what he says, don't go in people's house. You're not allowed. Okay? This, even if he's a thief, you're not allowed to get in there. Okay? You wait outside. Okay? Now look at again verse 12 to 13. And if the man is poor, you shall not keep his pledge overnight. Okay, that means if he owes you money and he gave you his pledge, okay, you cannot keep it overnight. You have to give it back to him before sunset because the guy is poor. He needs to make more money in order to render the money, right? He said, you shall, verse 13, in any case return the pledge to him again when the sun goes down, that he may sleep in his own garment and bless you. And it shall be righteousness to you before the Lord your God. Right? That is, if you happen to have taken a pledge from him, you keep it no further than evening. And I love the way this verse ends. The Lord your God. Because he's watching. Because man belongs to him. It doesn't belong to anybody. That's the principle behind all this, right? It's respect of anybody in there. So he is the one, God is the one who watches over everything. These things matters a lot to him, right? And he says, if you do that, he will bless you. That means God's going to hear what he says. And he's going to act according to what he says. Okay, so that brings us, okay, to really respect the same thing. Now, by the way, what the law says, Jesus really brought it up in the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, the Sermon on the Mount actually is an exposition of the Mosaic law of all these things. There in the Sermon on the Mount, he teaches the same and goes even deeper. It asks the person actually not only to render what you owe, or not to ask like it says like this, but to give the other cheek. Okay? And even he goes further. He says, love your enemies. Okay, I want to talk about this, by the way. I want to talk about loving your enemies and giving the other cheek. And I want to ask you a question. Okay? How do you give the other cheek today? Hello there. Okay? How do you give the other cheek? I want to hear. Okay? This is a commandment. This is a commandment. What does it mean to give the other cheek?
Not to answer back. Not to respond to the threat or whatever.
If somebody takes $1,000 from you.
Well, bring it to the Lord. That's what I would do.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's see the passage, okay? Let's go to Matthew 5. Because that's, by the way, again, you have to consider Matthew as being even the Old Testament. He expounds the Old Testament. 5, 38 and 39. By the way, I just want to tell you, the eye for an eye and giving the other cheek is exactly the same concept. Because people say, oh, look, Jesus says give the other cheek, and the Old Testament says an eye for an eye. It is the exact same thing. This is what I'm going to try to demonstrate to you today. Yes, my dear. I'm about to tell you. Okay. Well, I hope I can succeed in telling you. Look at verse 38, 39. Now Jesus, we have to understand also what Jesus is saying, right? He says, you have heard it, that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him as well. Okay. So, what is he saying exactly? Is Jesus contrasting what he's saying with the Mosaic law? No, he's not contrasting he's not contrasting what he's saying with the Mosaic law. He's contrasting what he's saying with what the Pharisees were saying. Because he's saying exactly what the Mosaic law says. Because Jesus came to fulfill the Mosaic law, he never broke the Mosaic law. Right? And so when he says it has been said, because he said you have said something against the Mosaic law. I'm here to establish the Mosaic law. In fact, he fulfilled it. He's the only one who fulfilled it itself. Okay? And so he says, give the other cheek, okay? Now, and I want you to notice that the slap is intensified, because if someone slaps another on the right cheek, okay, that means he did it like this, okay? That's a that is insult. Slap you, in fact the Mishnah says, if somebody slaps you like this, he pays, let's say 30 shekels. If he slaps you like this, he pays 13 times 30 shekels. That means, like, it slaps you on the cheek. That is a very high offense. Okay? Now, let me suggest something to you, because maybe you're going to understand something about what the Mishnah says here. By the way, those who don't know what the Mishnah is, this is the Jewish oral law. You know, it has some good things in there. It was written at the time of Jesus. Okay, so there's one important element that we must consider here. You know, to slap somebody's cheek. Okay, what is it? It's a criminal offense. It is a criminal offense. I don't think that Jesus is asking us to forgive a criminal offense, because we cannot forgive a criminal offense. This is the law's business. I can't go to the law and forgive, let's say, somebody who makes a hold up in the bank. I can't go and forgive somebody who kills somebody else. I don't have this jurisdiction. Okay, all I have as a jurisdiction is to forgive, that is not to keep a grudge, and to make things as easy as possible for the person who actually slapped me on the cheek. But when somebody slaps you on the cheek, this is not your business, it's the law's business. Once the law takes care of it, this is when you forgive yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but instead of turn to the other, also you should let.
No, that doesn't mean that you should turn away like this to slap you the other cheek. In a sense that, do not keep a grudge. In that sense, do not keep, let's say, a fence around you against this person. Do not exaggerate what he gave you, because giving the other cheek, the punishment is high. We see it in the first century, and you know today, to the law, if you hit somebody in the cheek or whatever, give him a punch, the police arrests you. It's against the law.
But the thing is, the Mishnah, I mean, I don't know, but I do know Judaism, when they went over this eye for eye, they did say that it was, if someone damaged an eye, you were supposed to give monetary restitution.
That's right.
They said that, I mean, I'm one of the, and I guess they do claim that Christians like misinterpret the Talmud. The Talmud was portrayed as like being very heartless. Because it was a Talmudical principle that you didn't go out and take someone else's.
No, it never happened like this. Of course not. It's not a question of an eye. They take off the eye for their own. The Hammurabi law would say that. It's only to equate the whole thing. But I want you to understand, I don't know if I lost you already, right? When it comes to giving out the other cheek, criminal offense we cannot forgive. Even if you want to forgive, you don't have the jurisdiction over it. But you can forgive the offense. Okay, so that you can go back to the person and say, I'm forgiving you, I'm going to try to lessen whatever it is that the law is going to go against you, because you broke the law when you did something like this. Okay, so when somebody takes $1,000 from you, don't give him another $1,000. That's not what the law says. If he takes $1,000, you're allowed to go to the law. you're allowed to go actually to the police. This is what it says, right? If it's somebody in the church, you come to the elders. That's the law, by the way, what it is. And I want to give you an example of Paul. Paul, when he was arrested, okay, he did not give the other cheek. By the way, just before we go to Paul, remember when Jesus was slapped on one cheek when he was arrested at the temple? He turned around and he says, "Why do you do that?" He didn't say, "Oh, slap me in the other one." He didn't say that, right? You have to evaluate the situation well and to see where the offense is. And then he forgave. He says, "Father, forgive them all." C'est ça, à pardonner après l'offense. C'est un peu ça que ça veut dire. Ne garde pas, si tu veux, quelque chose dans ton cœur, une agressivité ou quoi que ce soit. Il faut que la loi soit bien faite, le plus possible. C'est ce que ça veut dire. Parce que quelqu'un qui fait quelque chose contre la loi, il doit faire affaire avec la loi. On n'est pas là pour se mettre entre la loi et la personne. C'est un peu ça. Okay? Vous pouvez argumenter ce point. Okay, il est là. Mais en tout cas, on va voir let's see the example. In Acts 22, I'm just going to read you, I'll tell you a little bit about the story. Okay, in Paul, in his lifetime, he used the law of the country at the same time he gave the other cheek. Okay? When the Romans arrested him, okay, the Romans arrested, by the way, Romans were not allowed to arrest somebody who's a Roman citizen and scourge them. Okay, scourged them means they beat him up. So what they did is that they arrested Paul and they scourged them. Okay, that's in Acts 22. And then Paul turns around and he says, "You are doing this against a Roman citizen." And they got really scared. Okay, so Paul had a choice. He could have called the higher authority against them, right? And so on. And he says, "No, let me go." And he left. And he forgave that offense. You can forgive an offense without going to the higher authorities as well. Okay, but the persons got actually apologized and they were very actually scared when he saw this. Okay, that's giving the other cheek. Okay, as long as they understand the offense is in there. Tell me.
I don't understand. I cannot comprehend. You know, he forgave them. You know, said, Roman. It doesn't mean he gave other cheek.
Well, he didn't give the other cheek because in a sense that he didn't go to the higher authorities. He could have made a big deal out of it. He could have got them arrested completely. They went against the law by doing this because they didn't actually ask him before who he was. And so he allowed them to do that. He was actually blooded. And he says, "What you're doing to me, I'm a Roman citizen, you see, you're not supposed to do that." Okay, it's complicated. All it is that don't keep a grudge. If you're let's say somebody steals something from you, make sure you get your money back or whatever, but don't overdo it. Try even to forgive as much as you can. This is what it is to give the other cheek. Otherwise, if you don't give the other cheek, you're going to be very aggressive against this person. And that's going to create even more of a bad situation. This is what it is.
What's the difference, Pastor, between being a true Christian and being a worldly? When you're worldly, you don't give it.
Do you know how many Christians are going to court between themselves? That's the worst it is. Yeah.
When you're really with Christ,
Yeah.
just do it. You know, that's why, like you said, and it's written in the book, that you
Yeah.
don't need the law to
Yeah.
live.
That's right. I know that my son, who Ilan, who's a lawyer, he doesn't want to take cases Christians against Christians anymore. He says, "I don't know what to tell. I mean, I can't fight against another Christian," so he just don't take him and another lawyer who are both Christians. They don't take these cases anymore. Yeah.
There's a problem now with cybercrime. You can go on the internet,
Yes.
demolish somebody, spread an expose on somebody.
Yeah. That's right. Yes, you can do that. There's a lot of things. Yeah. Tu avais, Monsieur Marc.
I just want to say what you taught the other day about Jesus.
Yeah.
When they wanted so much to crucify him, they went against their own law, everything. But
Yes.
you didn't say a word. You could have said, "Well, that's not against your own law." But
That's
you
right.
didn't say anything.
That's right.
You went through and then
That's right.
you gave them enough.
And when you forgive, you show your strength. Only people who are very strong can forgive. Remember that. People who are weak are going to retaliate and right away. Okay, so this is where you see the power of man and women who are in God. Okay, in fact, just look at the life of Christ, life of Jesus. Look at the Gospels and follow him. It's really good. Now, if you think this question was difficult, let me ask you another one. Okay, Jesus says, "Love your enemies." How do you do that? Okay. People often speak of the easiest thing, right? Love your children, love your brother, love your sister, your friends. They never tell you love your enemy. By the way, this is purely biblical. You find nothing like this in history, and you find nothing like this after Christianity. Jesus is the only one who says that. Because, by the way, if you have any problem, look at him. Look who's saying that, because he forgave the enemies. But how do we forgive the enemy, right? Yes.
Forgiving is different from loving.
Then what? Allowing?
Loving.
Oh, it's different from loving. Okay, what do you mean by that? Loving your enemies. Can you love your enemies?
No.
No. Okay, good. I love this. That's, oui. Question de grâce, bien sûr. C'est ça. C'est vrai. C'est vrai. Voilà, la grâce. Alors il faut refléter la grâce que nous recevons aux autres, recevant de Jésus. By the way, I just want to tell you that Jesus always, and God actually always brings us to the highest point where we turn around and say, I can do it. Okay, this is what he wants us to say, really. Remember, for instance, when at some point, I think in Matthew 18:19, Jesus explains marriage to the disciples, and the disciple says, then it's better not to marry. This was their conclusion. Why? Because he put it so high that they said it can't be. But Jesus wanted to hear this. This is when he would say, come to me and I'll make your marriage work, right? About salvation also. When he explained salvation, the disciple says that no one can be saved. He's right. No one can be saved. It's only through God. The same thing he says with Abraham. Okay, Abraham, after he gave all the promises to Isaac, right? And after he was 100 years old, and he says, okay, you know what? I want you to sacrifice him. Okay, it doesn't make sense. But he tested his faith, and Abraham says, fine, I'm going to do it anyway. So God is going to test our faith, okay, when it comes to this. But practically, how do you forgive your enemy? Oui. Non. Non. Ça on peut pas. C'est contre. Qui va nous permettre d'aimer nos ennemis, d'abord. Il y a ça aussi. Okay. I think, you know what? Yes, dis-moi. Évidemment, c'est pas toujours la faute de Satan, n'oublie pas. L'homme peut être très méchant. Satan, il va tout faire. Satan, il va toujours essayer d'ouvrir, je veux dire, ou de mettre le mal à son maximum, à son paroxysme. Mais l'homme lui-même est méchant. C'est pour ça qu'on a le millénium. Il y a le millénium qui s'en vient où Satan va être lié, qui dit, pendant 1000 ans. Ça va être un temps superbe, mais il va avoir beaucoup de péchés quand même. D'accord? Alors c'est vrai, il y a les forces du mal et il y a l'homme lui-même. Ok. Alors, de toute façon, la personne devient ennemie. Ok. Alors, comment est-ce qu'on fait ça? Je pense que ce que Jésus fait, I think what Jesus here is doing is that he's trapping us. He's actually cornering us, okay, against the wall. Okay, I remember when I took yes, dites-moi. If a person what?
He's not proud of himself.
Okay.
To humiliate himself is easier to forgive.
Okay, that's very good.
It's because of pride, you know.
Okay, it's very good. Oui.
of separating sin from the sinner. We hate the sin, but God loves the sinner.
Okay. But that's not always true. That is not always true. Because it is written in the book of Psalm that the wrath of God is on the sinners. Which sinners? Those who do not repent. Those who would promote their sins. Romans 1:18 says it. Romans chapter 1 and chapter 2, it says that the wrath of God is upon them. So at some point, the believer in sin, but when they become one, God says, that's it, my wrath is upon him. So it's a cliche sometimes we use that would make others believe that we forgive the sins. No, we have to tell people if you sin, you're going to pay for it. God, cannot do that. This is why we have the book of Leviticus and all these things, right? And so this is why we need to develop the fear of the Lord. Remember the fear of the Lord, the reverence of the Lord. Oui, dis-moi. Oui. Ah.
La meilleure façon d'être une bénédiction pour ton ennemi, c'est essayer de refléter au maximum le Christ lui-même, parce que
voilà.
Entre nous, il n'y a pas de place à des ennemis, mais que la bénédiction. Donc il y a quelque part quelqu'un qui a été désobéissant.
Toujours. When there's a feud, when there's an argument between two people, I just want to tell you something. It's because there's a lack of love somewhere. It always is. It's written in the Bible that love covers a multitude of sin. Okay? Someone did not do that. And this is what it's keeping on and on. Just want to tell you that. Because at the end, this is what it comes up. But that's following. Oui. Ah oui. 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 C'est ça. C'est ça. D'abord, il n'est pas question qu'on laisse nos ennemis ou des personnes qui veulent nous faire du mal, les laisser à nous faire du mal comme ça. On n'est pas des tapis là. We're not like carpets that people walk on us, right? We have to defend ourselves. We have to protect ourselves. We have to put away. Okay? We're talking here about the condition of the heart to forgive your enemies. That's after that. You protected yourself. To love your enemies doesn't mean you open your house and to let the thieves come in. Once you put that big fence and that big wall, then you can forgive them. Tu voulais dire quelque chose? Oui. Ah, okay. Oui. Voilà. C'est ça. Là, tu prends une perspective divine de la situation. Ça, c'est très bien. Ouais, ça devrait aider tout le monde,
For example, if somebody has been through what I've been through,
yes.
but still I pay for it.
Yes.
Every second. How can I love them? I forgave them because
okay.
They are
yes.
They are stupid. But
oui.
God, to love them, even Jesus was on
the cross, he loved them.
He said,
no.
He said, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they are doing. He didn't say,
so that's forgiveness.
That's forgiveness.
Yeah.
But forgiving and loving is
no, it's the same. Let me finish. Yeah. Okay.
It's important for us to understand, this is how I understand, the love that he says, it doesn't talk about that tender, love that we have to have. It's about all that Paul was talking love is respect, is forgiving, it's being not easily angered.
No, I don't agree.
Is that not?
I don't agree. No. You have to love like mourning. blessed are those who mourn. You mourn for the sin that's around them, the sin that they commit, the sin that they hit you with. This is what it means to forgive more. Okay? Not to just push them away, but to go to them and to pray that because listen, when you hear about criminals, God is going to punish every criminal. Don't think everything is free. No sin is free. Everything is recorded. At the end, everyone's going to have to pay for it, except the believers, right? So we, knowing the severity of God, we have to start praying for the enemies that are doing bad, because they have no idea of the punishment that is coming to them. That's what loving your enemies, so to speak, comes about. But let me show you now a practical way to love your enemy. Okay? And remember, this is practical. If you do that, in a few months, you're going to start loving your enemies. Okay? I hope it works. Now, I remember I took a math class, okay? It was very advanced, like university and so on, and there was a problem. We couldn't get anywhere. And so the teacher said something very good. He says, you know what? If you can't get there, it's because you missed out on a few theories before then. You have to go back. Go back. And I remember Einstein. You know Einstein, the theory of relativity? He actually was so simple, okay, that people made fun of him. He went back to the base and he said, well, if a train goes out from this point and arrives there, and if we measure it, we have the measurement. And the people say, what are you talking about? He talked about measurement, because this is not what they were doing. They were doing too many things. So they went back from the bottom and they started up. Okay. So when it comes to loving your enemies, who should we love first before we can love your enemies? Your neighbor. Your neighbor. You start with this. Once we're told to love our enemies. You know how many times we're told to love our neighbors? At least in the gospel 12 times. And so many times Paul says this is the core of a church. This is a core of a congregation. Okay? You start doing this to pray for your neighbor, and you're going to see it's easier then to go higher. Okay? This is why sometimes it seems to be so far out, because the word enemy is somebody who wants to hit you back. But we know we're protected. We understand now that the Lord is with us and nothing will happen to us unless He agrees to it, right? So this is what it is, love your enemies. So we can learn, actually I want to tell you a story that really touched me to understand loving your enemies. And I've said it before, maybe you'll remember. You remember Ruby Bridges? Who knows Ruby Bridges? You don't know Ruby Bridges. Okay. So she's known for being the first black child to attend an all-white elementary school, in 1960. Okay, so the integration was marked by anger and violence, every day for weeks as she entered the building. There were people lining up, yelling at her, and threatening her. Imagine, right? She was only 6 years old. 6 years old. And she went through she's alive, by the way, and so on. Okay, so, by the way, this moment even marked the history of the U.S. There was a painting made by the American painter Norman Rockwell. Okay, you can go Norman Rockwell. He shows her, and he shows some CIA guys or FBI guys, walking with her to protect her, okay? So one day, her teacher saw her lips moving as she walked through the crowd, with her mother. She was there, and federal agents. So when the teacher told the psychiatrist who was helping the family to cope, he asked Ruby what was she saying? What was she saying as she was walking? And this is what she responded. She says, I wasn't talking to them, she said. I was just saying a prayer for them. She was praying for them, right? While they were insulting her and so on. Why? Because here you see a child understanding. By the way, children understand God better than we do. Okay? They have this knowledge. And there she was, and then the psychiatrist asked her, she says, why do you do that? And she answered, she said, because they need the prayers. You see? That is a perfect, to me, example of somebody who loves her enemy, from a child, And by the way, she's alive. You can look upon her like she's doing some work here and there. For loving your enemies. So we're going to try. We're going to try to double our efforts to love each other, and we're going to talk about it in a few months, God willing, and we're going to see it's easier after that. Not always. I know. Okay. That's right, Ruby Bridges. R-U-B-Y. Bridges, yeah. That's right. Okay, for this, let's go back to Deuteronomy. By the way, all this is in the love of God. All this is what God wants us to understand. This is why He gave the Mosaic Law. Again, the Mosaic Law is not like bad as we think, like punishment and so on. This is what is at the core of it. Okay? So let's go see now chapter 20. Again, we're going to navigate through the whole law. Okay. Now chapter 20 is about warfare. The war, okay, and it's beautiful. The laws of warfare are beautiful, okay. Okay, so war in itself is not a nice thing, okay. It's like the cutting loose of hell on earth. This is what war is. It brings the worst of men in killing and maiming and also whatever they do. And so the outcome of war is suffering, starvation, destruction of property, and so on and so forth. But there are times when war is necessary, and there are times where a nation must protect itself, okay? And so God gave laws as to how to make war, so to speak. And so because the Jewish people were to enter the land at this time and face many battles with the Canaanites, right? They had at least 31 different kings within Israel. So these laws were given, but it touches us as well, okay? Because the principle is there. We're going to see a beautiful principle. Let's read the first 4 verses of chapter 20. And so he calls the soldiers to go to war. And he says like this. He says, so when you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them. For the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. So it shall be when you are on the verge of battle that the priest shall approach and speak to the people. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid, and do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is He who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. He's talking to believers here, by the way, also. He's talking to believers, okay? First Moses speaks to them and says what? First, do not be afraid. Do not let your heart faint. Do not tremble. Do not be terrified because the Lord is with you, okay? So, because at some point in time, He's going to say, if you're afraid, go. You don't have to war. We don't need you. This is what God says, right? So, going to war for God that is exercising our faith. Because any soldiers, by the way, when they were at the beginning, when they had to go fight, there were giants there, okay? And they were more numerous. Talking about thousands and thousands of people against maybe a bunch of Israelites, right? They had to have faith in God. Again, this speaks to us today. Because in the warfare, spiritual warfare, there's no way you're going to fight against these humongous spirits, right? These demons. I don't know if you want to see the description of good angels, go to Ezekiel chapter 1. Demons are worse than that. There's no way you can fight them. But the Lord says, don't be afraid. I'm going to be with you. Okay? He's doing the war for us. So it's a question of faith. Okay? Again, remember Ephesians 6. Put on the armor of God. Okay, because we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but every spiritual things, and he explains all this. Again, remember, put on. What does that mean, put on? It means that you don't have it. You wake up in the morning, and you're going to war without your armor, without your gun. Imagine, the enemy loves this. Imagine you're in the middle of a field, and you're there, and they shoot at you, you can't shoot back. You forgot your gun at home. Okay, so what is the armor of God? Prayer, reading the Word of God. Then you can go and fight. Remember one thing as we're talking about war. Important verse, 1 Corinthians 10:13. 1 Corinthians 10:13. If you have one verse to memorize this week, go ahead. 10:13. I'll read it for you. No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. What does that mean? That if you're going through a tough time, be sure that there's a door out to get out of it. There's a way out. Okay, it might be not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe you have to fight a little bit, but this verse tells you that the Lord has prepared you for this situation. There's no situation where a believer is where they are not strong enough to go through it. Okay, so wartime, it's okay. And the fiercest the war, that means the better you are. Okay? And in the following verse, Deuteronomy 20, it's interesting to find out 4 military exemptions. There are 4, okay, you want to go to war, but they give 4 military exemptions. I'm going to give them to you. You can read them later. God says, if you have just built a house, don't go to war. Because you might die and you won't be able to enjoy the war. If you just got married, don't go to war. You have to stay he gives 1 year free. Okay, it's very nice. Free from war. From war. Free. Vacation. 1 year.
No, but he has to work, right?
And if you're afraid, don't go. Don't go to war. That would be bad, not to go to war because you're afraid. The person who's afraid not to go to war at that time is because they did not realize the power of God that was with them. The power of God that brought them out of Egypt and so on and so forth. And every believer also. Don't be afraid to go to war. Many believers don't go to war because they're afraid to go to war. They're afraid to speak about their faith. They're afraid to go forward. They're afraid to make changes, I'm telling you, in their lives about certain things and so on, because they're afraid to do that. Okay, don't. Remember, I want to bring you you remember in Judges 7 with Gideon? And Gideon had to fight 35,000 Midianites. Okay, and so he came with the whole army. Okay, and God says, too much, too many. At the end he says, just bring me 300. 300, they were 135,000. Okay, he says, because these men, okay, are the ones who are not afraid, who are faith. And with the 300, he beat up these 135,000. So this is the examples that we have. We have this also in history, and so on and so forth, right? Now, oui. Voilà. Reste à la maison, là, pas besoin de toi. Est-ce que Dieu a tout? C'est vrai, c'est fort, c'est quand même fort. But I'm going to bring you to another passage of the, we have another 15 minutes, because I want to do that.
4 exemptions. I just have
3, did I say 4?
4 military exemptions. Just build a house, if you just got married, you are afraid.
If you're afraid, if you just got married, if you build a house, if you build a business.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the business as well. It's very considerate, by the way. Okay? The law is very well. It says a vineyard or something like if you planted a vineyard, remember that? Yeah. Now, this is really beautiful here. Now, in the following verses in chapter 20, it is interesting to find out, is it chapter 20? Yeah, the 21, I'm sorry. The story about a woman taken captive. When in the world are you going to go to get a woman captive, right? But look at the principle here. So what's happening is that the Israelites go into a city, they get it, very nice, and one soldier saw a woman over there, and he liked her very much, and so he wants to take her home, okay? So God sees this, and he says, okay, I'm going to give you a law, okay? I want you to read the law and see how God protects both Israel, the soldier, and the woman. Okay? Look at verse 10 to 14, chapter 21. It's a beautiful story of respect in here. He says, when you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captive the beautiful woman, and desire her, and would take her for your wife. You see, it goes right away. Like, you're not allowed to take somebody just, right, as you like, right? Then he says, you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails. She shall put off her clothes and of her captivity, remain in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go with her to be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall set her free. But you certainly shall not sell her for money. You shall not treat her brutally, because you have humbled her. Okay. So what do we have here? First of all, you're not allowed to go into a city, take a woman just like this, right? He says, oh, you want to take her for wife, right? Because there's no other ways. And then, what do? She has to say two things, okay? That is, the whole thing protects Israel and the woman. Okay, first of all, the woman has to be brought home, and her hair has to be shaved, and her, that is, nails trimmed. Okay, because we know from history that when the people come to, an enemy comes into a city, the women made themselves very beautiful so that they would not be killed, right? They would be taken for the soldiers. So God said, shave her hair and keep her for a month. Because if the guy really took her because he likes her, okay, he's gonna like her without her hair. And he's gonna like her without her nails, and he's gonna like her after a month. Okay, if this is true love. Okay, so there, he's protecting the woman. Okay, don't touch her. She's mine, so to speak. 1 month, right? And in the same way, he's protecting Israel. Because you don't know what kind of woman that is. Is she coming like with her gods, just like Solomon when he married 700 wives? Okay, they all came with their gods and everything. Okay, so he's protecting Israel because they have to know her for a period of time of 1 month. Dis-moi. Oui. 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 C'est ça. Ça. Qui? Ah. Ok. Maintenant, écoute, justement, on va parler de ça samedi. C'est drôle, c'est dans le livre de Nombres. Ce qui se passe, c'est que ce n'est pas une question qu'elle soit juive ou non juive. Ce n'est pas une question de peuple ou même de personne. C'est une question de foi. Parce que les non-juifs étaient bien acceptés en Israël. D'ailleurs, on va voir dans le livre de Nombres que si quelqu'un rentre en Israël et Dieu dit, vous avez une loi pour celui qui vient d'en dehors, pour l'étranger et pour vous. Il n'y a pas de loi. Alors que c'est un peu comme l'olivier dans Romains 11. Quiconque vient est graffé par la foi. Et quiconque venait dans le domaine d'Israël devait être circoncis. Maintenant, ce qui fait la circoncision, c'est la circoncision du cœur surtout. Donc c'est la foi. Donc ce n'est pas une question que la personne soit juif ou non juif, ou arabe ou pas arabe ou n'importe quoi. Question de foi. Alors dans le temps d'Ezra, ces femmes-là, c'était des Canaanites qui sont venues avec leur Dieu. Et c'est pour ça qu'Ezra dit non, il faut les relâcher. Ok, c'est une question de foi là-dedans. Mais c'est ce que c'est. Alors cette femme-là pouvait être acceptée en Israël si après 1 mois ils ont vu qu'elle avait une foi et qu'elle avait accepté, si tu veux, le Dieu d'Abraham, d'Isaac et de Jacob. C'est un peu ça. Yeah, Mike. Yeah. Yeah.
If you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. Does that mean after the 1 month period?
Yes.
I don't like her. Not after going into her and being.
That's right. You don't touch her. Because God makes sure if you touch her, she's your wife. You know, there's no such thing. Yeah.
So it's after the 1 month.
After one. That's right. Yeah. And make sure you take care of her. Because the Lord is after you if you don't. Because she belongs to the Lord. That's the idea.
Because a lot of unbelievers, atheists,
yes.
These verses try to say the Bible is equals.
No. Advantage? Yes. On the contrary, it is actually the contrary. He's protecting the woman completely. And this woman at the end, she can go and well, you know. Oui.
And also, during this month,
Wait, he had to pay everything for it. I didn't think about this one, yeah. His parents, he says, bring him to your parents' house. Obviously, the reason why the parents' house, because the guy is not married. No, it's not even a question. If you're married, you don't look at a woman. That is, in your parents' house, that means the guy is not married and everything. Hold on, let's see anyway. Hein? Ah, l'islam a pris ce passage? Okay. Ah oui? Okay. Islam actually you find the same passage in Islam, in the Quran. Non, il l'a interprété d'une autre manière. That's right. It's actually parents' house.
Oh, it's in different.
Yeah. What do you have?
King James.
King James?
Yeah, in your house. Her home to your house.
Okay. Let me look the original now, because King James usually is good, yeah.
How wrote rabbis interpret the fact that
Who?
Rabbis?
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with a Jewish friend.
Yeah.
When she was insisting that the genealogy goes through a mother, not a father.
Yeah.
I asked her, then how about Bible allows that Jews are married to other women from other cultures? How then these Jews are not considered Jews? She says no.
No. Okay, first of all, you tell her that the idea that a mother, the Jew, comes only if a mother actually is Jewish, that's from the 1st century. Okay, the rabbis said that. Because God never made a distinction between one and the other. It's always a question of faith. Okay? And to remind her that it's in the Bible, it's mainly by men, not by women. Okay, remember Joseph had 2 sons from the wife of a priest. It wasn't Jewish. Ephraim and Manasseh. Tell her that 2 tribes of Israel, their mother is not Jewish. That means they're not mothers. They're not Jewish. And also, David's great-grandmother was Ruth, the Moabite. Remind her that. Just tell her this is a new religion you believe in. It's only the scriptures. Yeah, Hannah.
I just want to say this law was to prevent the idea of rape.
That's right.
Ancient history.
Yes.
It's a common fact. They would go into a village and
Even today. You see, here it's a respect for the woman.
Okay, you have warfare, but you don't act like animals where you indiscriminately just,
That's right. That's the beauty of the Mosaic law, yeah.
I haven't read Quran, I don't know, but for me it's difficult to believe that Quran says the same thing.
No, it doesn't say the same thing. They reinterpret it.
Because
they took that law and I don't know what they say. I have to look into it.
According to Islam, a man can have 4 wives.
4 wives, yes. Actually, and this is where we're going today. That's the next one. We have 5 minutes. I just want to show you this one. Okay, look at verse 15. How verse 15 begins. Tu l'as? Oui. Qu'est-ce que tu as? Dis-moi. C'est ça. Voilà. Mais alors attends une seconde, il y a quelque chose qui ne va pas dans ce verset. Okay, what's wrong in this verse?
Can you translate it?
What is verse 15? Verse 15. It says, if a man has 2 wives, what's wrong with this? Is it okay for a man to have 2 wives? You can't have 2 wives. No, Dieu l'a jamais permis. No, God never allowed that. God couldn't actually even tell them not to have, because he wasn't supposed to.
I know, but Leah built up most.
It wasn't supposed to. It was not supposed to, because every time you have 2 wives, more of 1 wife, you have big problems.
How would the tribes of Israel been built?
Through 1 wife. Whatever. Jacob went with Rachel. And so he was blinded, he got drunk, he was blinded by Laban, with Leah, and then Leah with Rachel, they fought against each other, and so on and so forth. God recognizes the children, always. In fact, he's talking about this right now. He's even protecting the children of the 2 wives. Remember, just like Jesus says that God gave laws for divorce, right? He says God did it for the hardness of your heart. And it's the same thing here. When God made Adam and Eve, he said this is an ehad. They are one. right? Every time you have one, for example, when Hagar came into Abraham's life, what was actually why? It's because he went to Egypt and he started to lie. Remember, he lacked faith. He paid for it. Okay? And he did that. Same thing with Jacob. He went to his father, okay, and he pretended to be Esau, his father was blind. Same thing happened to him. At night he was so drunk he didn't know if it was Leah or Rachel, and so Laban gave him Leah. Okay? And he was obligated to stay another 7 years and so on. Every time you have more than one wife, it's a big problem. It was not meant to be. Okay? Just imagine the wives, one against the other and so on. The law deals with this, by the way. Now, tell me.
There's one thing that I remember when God commanded if somebody's husband dies, the brother will take the wife. So that's the only place that...
No. That means he dies.
No. The brother is responsible.
Yeah.
It has to be like a husband
Yes.
to the woman, right?
Yes.
So it's, if he has his wife still alive, then he has...
No. The brother he's not married. He's not married. What do you think? No. The brother is not married. Otherwise he wouldn't give it. Only the brother though who's not married. And if he doesn't want, it's a big hassle. Il les avait parce que c'était la façon dont il faisait les choses, mais Dieu ne voulait pas ça. Dieu, c'était une seule femme. Une seule femme, toujours. I'm going to give you an example. Mais attendez, ouais. Hein? C'est exactement. C'est ça. But look at, I just want to show you in verse 15. It says, and he has two wives, and he loves one, but the other isn't loved. You see how cruel that is? This is not unacceptable. Imagine you have two wives, and they're fighting against each other. Marc, tu voulais dire quelque chose avant que je donne l'exemple?
Just about to say that this is great. It's not because God, when these guys took two wives,
Yeah.
God didn't bring judgment on them. It doesn't mean it's permitted.
That's right. Et bien sûr. That's right.
And since 2,000 years,
Yeah.
many Christians,
Yeah.
and we're not dead.
That's right. There's a beautiful example, okay? So Abraham had Sarah, his wife. She died. And then he married what's her name? Keturah, isn't it? And so she becomes, it's written, his wife. But when both died, in the Chronicles, it says Sarah, the wife of Abraham, and Keturah, the concubines of Abraham. She actually was degraded, okay, to a concubine instead of being the wife, because he cannot have two wives.
Keturah's not, there was, I think, a matrix that was Hagar.
No. No, that's what the Talmud says, by the way. Don't believe them. She was another woman. He married again. Imagine, 120 years old. I don't know, he married. Okay. But you see, one is a wife, she dies, the other one is a wife, and then when they both died, one wife and the other one concubine. She lost her title because God recognizes only one wife, so to speak.
Even
Sarah.
after the death of the wife.
Even after the death, yeah. He goes back and he says, history, this is her wife. Can have two wives, okay? Now, we finished. I'm just going to give you a illustration. Mark Twain, you know Mark Twain? Okay, so Mark Twain was lecturing, about the husband and wife and so on, the importance, and Mormon came to him because some Mormons believe that you can have more than two wives, you understand? And he says, can you find a single passage in the scriptures which forbids polygamy? Okay, in fact there isn't really. He says, sure, but he found one. He says, no man can serve two masters. That's right, you're supposed to laugh, okay. Okay, tu as compris cela? Okay, that was the joke.
But they take that, when they get that view, Judaism allowed multiple wives too. When the state of Israel was first founded,
they did?
Jews from Yemen.
Oh, they came with the many